What is going on, everybody? I hope you're having a fantastic day today. As you can tell, we're not in a very familiar place. We're actually in my 2018 Toyota RAV4. Now, the reason we're in this car is because as of last Tuesday, which was September 24th, 2019, I have owned this car for exactly 1 year. And I thought that there's no better time to talk about my ownership experience over this past year, what issues I've had, the miles I've driven, and just my personal experience over this last year of ownership. Later on in this video, I will also talk about the 5 things I love and hate about this vehicle. So stick around and find out a little bit more information about my 2018 Toyota RAV4 and if I've enjoyed my overall experience over this past year. So in the 1 year that I've owned this car, I have driven 13,942 miles. Now that's not a very small number, and you also got to account for the fact that I also drive my Dodge Challenger probably about 4,000 or 5,000 miles over that same period. So I've definitely saved a lot of miles on my Dodge Challenger, but if you combine the two, I'm roughly around 18,000, 19,000 miles a year. Give or take 1,000 miles. So needless to say, I drive quite a bit. Now, definitely not as much as some people out there, but I think more than the average individual. And through that year and 13,000, 14,000 miles, I feel like I've gained a lot of knowledge on this car. I have gone through 2 services with Toyota. Now, Toyota has the Toyota Care program, which I think it's like 24 months or 25,000 miles, and so I don't have to pay for service, and so the services were completely free. You go in every 5,000 miles, so my next one will be about 1,000 miles from now. And they do all the oil changes, they do the tire rotations, they refill all your fluids, and so it's a pretty good service, and I haven't had any issues with it. In terms of issues or things I've noticed about this car, knock on wood, I actually haven't had any material issues with this vehicle. Nothing is broken yet, nothing's caused me any heartache. Honestly, it's been a pretty worry-free ownership experience so far. The one thing I've noticed, and this has been apparent since day one, is when I turn this vehicle on in the mornings and I start turning my wheel, there's this weird like knock or like clicking sound that I hear from the front wheels, and I have no idea what it is. I've taken it to the dealership when I take my car in for service, and I've mentioned this before, and they can't really recreate it, or they say they can't recreate it, and they don't know what it is, and I don't really know what it is. And honestly, I haven't really worried about it or brought it up more times because it hasn't really caused any issues. I haven't noticed any handling issues. It drives perfectly fine on the freeway. Overall, it's just that one sound I hear when I turn the car on, and then that's it. And then the rest of the time I'm driving it, I can't hear it. No matter how wide I turn the steering wheel, I don't hear that sound. And so that's why I haven't really been too concerned about it, and I haven't brought it up multiple times to the dealership because it hasn't really done anything wrong. But that is one thing I noticed from day one when I picked up this car. The very next day when I turned the car on, turned the wheel, I heard this knock. And maybe it's a normal thing for Toyota RAV4s, but I thought it was kind of weird because it was a brand new car and it had this noise, and it's still apparent today. But aside from that one sound, I haven't had any other issues with the car, and it's been honestly a great ownership experience, pretty worry-free. Now I want to start talking about the 5 things I love and hate about this vehicle, because as with every vehicle on the planet, no car is perfect, and there's going to be problems, there's going to be issues, and so there's some things that I've noticed that I don't love about this car, and there's other things that I really appreciate that this car comes with. So let's kick it off with the 5 things I love about the 2018 Toyota RAV4 LE. Now, the first thing I really love about this car has to do with the storage space. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of storage in the doors. There's a lot of storage underneath the display console in the middle of the vehicle. I mean, you've got a place to put your phone. You've got a place to put some change. You've got a cup holder that you could also use as storage. You've got a second cup holder behind the gear selector. Then you move on to the passenger side, and there's a good amount of storage just above the glove compartment. You can easily put some papers there, like pamphlets. You can put your phone there. You can put some change. And so just the front of the vehicle alone has a ton of places that you can put stuff when you're going on a road trip, or you're moving from one place to another. I actually used this car when I was moving, and very useful. You can pack a lot of stuff. And let's not even get started about the trunk being very massive for a car of this size. You can definitely put a ton of luggage there, and you can definitely fit some stuff in the back seats as as well, because there's storage, of course, in the left and right doors. So that's gotta be one of the things I really love about this car is the storage. The second thing that I really like, and it's worth mentioning, is although this is the LE, which if you're not familiar with Toyota's lineup, LE is just pretty much the cheapest, the most basic Toyota that you can get. So if you get a RAV4, a Camry LE, that's like the cheapest one you can get, but it still comes with a lot of options. And what I really love, and this brings me to my second thing, is the blind spot mirror. Now, I don't have blind spot monitoring on this car. It's, you know, that's a package. That's something you have to pay for. But what it does come with is this little blind spot mirror that's like in the corner of your regular side view mirrors, and it really shows a very good display of what your blind spot looks like. And so if you're making a turn on the freeway, I don't actually really have to turn and look at my blind spot. I can just take a look at that mirror and already know if there's a car in the other lane that's moving over to the lane that I'm moving into. So I think every car that comes out should have this type of mirror. I mean, both sides have it, and I know you can buy one that you can attach to your vehicle, but I think it's so smart and just so necessary for any car that doesn't have blind spot monitoring to have mirrors like this, because blind spot monitoring is an expensive option at times, most of the time because it's packaged in with other options, other safety assistance features. But just having something so simple as a small little mirror in the corner of your side view mirrors makes a huge difference when you're driving down the road in terms of safety. And so I really like that this car comes with that. Now, the next thing I really love about this car, the third thing, would have to be the maneuverability of this vehicle. This car is not very large. It's a compact or a small-sized SUV crossover. And I really like that there's a lot of interior room. There's tons of rear leg room, tons of trunk space, tons of space in the front. But it's really easy to maneuver. Now, I don't mean to say that this car handles like a sports car, but what I mean is that this vehicle is very easy to maneuver in tight spaces. So when I'm driving in downtown, it's very easy to find a parallel parking spot and fit into that space, because this isn't an F-150 truck. It's a pretty small crossover, and it's nice being able to maneuver in and out of lanes on the freeway and not really have to have a ton of space around my car. Honestly, I think my Challenger might be about the same size of this vehicle in terms of length, but it's much harder to maneuver my Challenger than it is this car, because you've got very big windows so you can easily see outside of them. You've got this nice blind spot mirror. You've got a big rear view mirror with a big rear window, and so it's very easy to see outside of this car. And I really enjoy that, because this being my daily driver, I don't have to stress every time I'm driving this vehicle about how I'm gonna fit into a certain space. It's very easy to understand the length and width of this car by just driving it for like 5 minutes. Now, the next thing I love about this car has to do with the sport mode. And when I click sport mode, I can get 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds in this vehicle. But in all seriousness, the sport mode, I've noticed, actually makes a pretty big difference in terms of the pickup of this vehicle. When I hit sport mode and I'm just driving in city traffic, I can typically accelerate a lot quicker than I can when I'm just in regular mode or eco mode. And honestly, eco mode does make a big difference in terms of the pedal responsiveness compared to sport and the regular mode as well. So I really like that the sport mode allows me a little bit of extra flexibility when I'm driving this car and I'm needing to go somewhere, or I'm needing to merge onto the freeway really quickly. The sport mode actually makes a significant difference. Now, when I first saw the sport mode, I thought it was kind of like a joke, because like, what kind of crossover with a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder is going to have a sport mode? But it honestly does make a pretty big difference, and I'm not racing this car. Pushing the button doesn't make it go 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, but it does add a little bit of responsiveness to the pedal that you sometimes need when you're merging onto the freeway or trying to pass somebody on the city streets. It makes a pretty big difference. So that's the fourth thing I really like about this car, is the sport mode. And the fifth thing I really love about this car has to do with the safety features. This car comes with Toyota Sense, which is kind of a suite of different safety features that Toyota throws in standard on all vehicles. And this is, like I said, the RAV4 LE. So this is the cheapest RAV4 that you can buy. There's actually nothing cheaper than this one. And it comes with a lot of really cool safety features. Now, I think you can get upgrades to Toyota Safety Sense, where if you pay a little bit more, you get a little bit more features like the blind spot monitoring. But for example, my car comes with lane departure warning. So if I'm driving down the road and I'm veering left and right off of the lanes, the car will actually beep and warn at me, and there's a little emblem at the bottom of my center display that shows me that I'm actually moving over a lane. And it's pretty useful, because if you end up being distracted or reaching for something, and for some reason you're veering off left or right of the lane, it does kind of move you back into your lane a little bit. It takes control of the wheel and veers you left or right back towards the middle of the lane. Now, it won't drive for you. I can't let go of the steering wheel and have it drive for me like a Tesla, but it does provide a little bit of assistance in case you are, distracted, or maybe you just didn't notice that the lane has changed. It will push you in a certain direction, and that's really cool. You can definitely turn it off. There's a button on the left side of the steering wheel down below that you can push, and that will shut that system off entirely. But in my experience, I think it's been pretty useful. Sometimes the beeping gets annoying, but overall, I think it's for the better, and I think it makes people more safe when they're driving on the road. The other thing that comes with Toyota Safety Sense is adaptive cruise control. So I click a button on the steering wheel here, and what that means is it will match the speed of the vehicle in front of me when I'm on cruise control. And, 10 years ago, this was an option that came on the highest optioned Mercedes S-Classes. Now it's coming on a base Toyota RAV4 LE. So it's really crazy how far technology has gone. But essentially, it will match the speed of the vehicle in front of me. And, I can control the distance that I am from that vehicle based on this button on the steering wheel. And so if I feel like I want to be closer to that car, I can control that with my steering wheel. And it's really cool. I've used it on the freeway a lot when I'm going on road trips. I turn on adaptive cruise control, and the adaptive cruise control combined with the lane departure assist makes it a really enjoyable experience when you're going on a road trip. And the other thing that I've noticed with the Toyota Safety Sense is it has automatic high beams. And so that's a feature where if you have your high beams on all the time, it will actually shut off when it sees a vehicle coming towards you so that you don't blind the other individual. Again, a pretty cool feature that you typically would see 10 years ago on the most luxurious Mercedes and BMWs, and now you're seeing it in a Toyota RAV4. Now, I know Toyota Safety Sense also includes like automatic emergency braking and some other features, but the ones I just mentioned are the most notable, and those are the ones that I actually see when I'm driving down the road. I will also add that if you don't like the adaptive cruise control, if you hold down the cruise control stalk on the right-hand side of your steering wheel, you hold it down for a certain amount of seconds, it will shut off the adaptive cruise control, and then you can just use it as a regular cruise control feature. So you don't have to use it as adaptive cruise control all the time. Now I want to mention the 5 things I hate about the Toyota RAV4. Now, obviously, these aren't things that I actually hate about this vehicle, but they are things that I think Toyota should have done a little bit better. Even though this is the most basic Toyota RAV4, I think there are some ways that they could have improved it, especially given some of the competition in the industry at the same price point. Now, the first thing I hate about it has to do with the softness of the elbow rest on the passenger and driver and the rear left and right doors. It's just not very soft. I mean, there's probably like a 1/4 centimeter of padding before you hit hard plastic underneath the padding, and it's just very hard. Like when you're driving this car on a long road trip and you're resting your arm there and your elbows there, it starts to hurt after a little bit of time because there's not much padding there. And this is when the car is new. I can imagine 10, 15 years from now when that padding is ultimately eliminated, I can't imagine that it's going to be very comfortable driving this car and resting your elbow there. It's pretty rough, and it's pretty hard to rest your arm there. And so that is one thing I think Toyota should have done better. It's not that difficult to add like an inch of padding instead of having barely any padding on the door. Now, the second thing I hate about this car, and all of the items so far have been in no particular order, but to me, I think this one item is the one thing I actually hate about this car, and the one thing that Toyota really just messed up on, and that has to do with the key. Now, my car does not have automatic push to start, and I understood that going into this purchase. I knew that if I bought this car, I'm not gonna have push to start. I don't need it. It's not a big deal. My Challenger has it. Now, what I do complain about is that although a lot of cars don't have push to start, they have created smart ways to use the key so that it doesn't stab and scratch everything that is in front of the vehicle. Now, that being said, I think Toyota should have engineered or designed this key to have like a switchblade flip out design, which is what Volkswagen does and a lot of other manufacturers do when they don't have push to start. Because of course you still have to put the key in and turn the ignition. That's understandable. But what I don't like about it is that on the Toyota key, the sharp key metal part is always exposed. And so if I ever have that in my hands and I'm approaching a door handle, or I'm opening my door, or I'm just brushing my car, it can easily scratch any of those surfaces. So you'll probably see a lot of scratches on the door handle. You'll probably see a lot of scratches on the paint near the door handle because the key is always exposed. And when I put it in my pocket, the sharp part of the key is always stabbing into my thigh. I've already scratched up the interior of my driver door just because I had the key in my hand when I opened the car door and I accidentally brushed by the plastic part and all of a sudden it's scratched. And so I think it's a very, very stupid design. I think Toyota should take a note from Volkswagen because the switchblade design is a lot smarter because you can hide the metal sharp part of the key when you're not using it, but then you can push the button and it comes out when you need to put it into the ignition and turn the car on. So that is definitely one of the things I really hate about this car is the Toyota key. Now, the next thing I really hate about this car has to do with the size of the gas tank. Now, I believe it's a 12-gallon tank, or I should say every time I fill up, it's usually about 12 gallons. And it just doesn't seem like it's large enough for the size of this vehicle. I feel like I can only get like 250 or 300 miles out of one tank of gas, and I think that they should have thrown in like a 16-gallon tank so that you can go maybe 400 or 500 miles on a single fill-up. I know that Nissan Altimas have like 500 miles on a single tank of gas, and the Toyota RAV4 is one of those cars that if you're taking on a road trip, I don't want to fill up every 300 miles. And so that's something I've noticed because I drive it to work every single day. I usually have to fill up this tank of gas probably every 5-6 days tops. I just don't think that's a very good idea. I think they should have expanded the size of the gas tank so that you can get more miles per fill up. It would just make it a much more enjoyable experience because this car is taking on a lot of road trips. And that brings me to the fourth thing I hate about this car, which has to do with the gas mileage. Honestly, I'm not very impressed. For being a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder and not being a gigantic SUV, I'm right now getting 23.5 miles per gallon since I started this vehicle. But over the ownership of the entire vehicle for the 63 or so hours that I've driven it, I've gotten 24.7 miles per gallon. Now, considering that I drive a lot of miles on the freeway, that's not really that great gas mileage. Granted, this is an all-wheel drive car, and that means that for the most part, this vehicle sends power to all four wheels. I still think that there are other competitors out in the industry that are able to still offer all-wheel drive, but get closer to like 28, 29 miles per gallon. And I don't really race this car to say that I'm constantly pedal to the metal. So I just think that the car could do a little bit better in terms of gas mileage. 24.7 isn't that far off from my Mercedes C300 that I had that was all-wheel drive and had a 3.5 liter V6 versus a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. So if you are in the market for a 2018 Toyota RAV4, I would just keep that in mind that you're probably not going to get close to 30 miles per gallon unless you're like 100% on the freeway and you're using cruise control the entire time. I just don't think those are realistic numbers. Now, the fifth and final thing that I really hate about this vehicle has to do with the copious use of plastic throughout the entire interior cabin. Now, again, I know I'm not purchasing a $45,000 luxury car. I think this car was like $25,000 when it was new, but there is a lot of plastic in the car. And that's one of the reasons why I hate the Toyota Key, because I can easily scratch all of these plastic parts. I mean, everything inside the car is plastic. You've got the top of the door trim, which is plastic. You've got some of this like fake aluminum trim that's clearly plastic if you knock on it. You've got the top of the dashboard, which is also plastic. You've got the area down here in your gear selector, which is also all plastic. The only parts that aren't actually plastic are the seats, surprisingly. This little foam pad that you get where you can rest your elbow on the driver and passenger door. And then you've got this kind of cool design, but it's also kind of a plastic, but it's more of a soft touch rubbery material, which is near your climate control vents and your radio display. It's just kind of an interesting material, but it's pretty much plastic. It's just more of a rubbery or softer touch plastic. And then the other place that's not plastic is your armrest over here in between the passenger and driver's seat. It's a relatively soft rubbery material as well. But other than that, everything else in this vehicle is plastic. It's not soft touch. And I know what I got into when I purchased this vehicle, but I just think that that is something that they've improved in this next generation RAV4. but it's something that was lacking in 2018 when I purchased this vehicle. Well, there you have it, folks. Those are the 5 things I love, 5 things I hate, and also my ownership experience over the past year of driving this RAV4 LE. There are a few things to note, though. If you are purchasing this vehicle or looking to purchase one, there's some features that are probably necessary and maybe you would look to purchase or upgrade if you are in the market. One thing I really would like is a push-to-start ignition. Now, that has to do with the key and how much I hate it, but I just think it's nice if you have push-to-start because you can keep the key in your pocket, open the door, and it's something I've grown accustomed to in my Dodge Challenger, and it's something I think is pretty normal in 2019 to get in almost any vehicle, regardless of whether it's luxury or just a basic car. I think push-to-start is pretty standard, and I wish that I had that feature when I purchased this vehicle because there are times when my hands are really full with groceries, and it's nice to just open the door and not have to worry about taking your key out and pushing the unlock button. So that's one feature I would get. If that's something important to you, please take note of that. The second feature is me living in Utah. It gets pretty cold for like 9 months of the year, and I wish I had the heated seats and heated steering wheel. Those are 2 options that I wish. And I'm not sure if the new RAV4 comes with a heated steering wheel. I know you can get heated seats as an option. Heated steering wheel might not be available, but heated seats for me is a necessity. It's really nice when it's cold outside. I can just turn those heated seats on. And that's, to me, is a feature that I wish I had gotten in this car, and I will probably get if and when I upgrade this vehicle. That's a feature I'm definitely going to take note of, is the heated seats. Especially if you're in a cold climate, it really does make a big difference when you go from a car with heated seats, which my Challenger and my previous Mercedes had, and then you go to a car that doesn't have it. So those are 2 features that I wish I had in this car, and maybe if you're like me and you have those same concerns, you might want to opt for those features. But other than that, this car has been pretty enjoyable, and if you are looking for a good daily driver, I honestly wouldn't recommend anything else. I looked at Subarus, Subaru Imprezas, and the Outback when I was purchasing this vehicle or looking to purchase this vehicle, and I ended up purchasing this car, and to me this was a very good idea because I would have probably regretted getting the Subarus. They're a little bit smaller, they're a little bit weaker, they typically come with a 2-liter engine, and so for me this car has been plenty, and it's actually satisfied all of my needs of being a good daily driver. So hopefully I provided some new information or some good information for you all. I hope you like, share, and subscribe if you did enjoy the content. And definitely find me on Instagram at Schwazy_. I post pretty cool photos of my Dodge Challenger. So if you want to see more content of that, definitely look at the other videos and follow me on Instagram. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I will catch you all at the next video. Take care.